Salutations, respect, and love, prog rock fans from around the world. You're in for a special treat today in the Prog Corner. I have once again as my guest the one and only, the great Scott Medina is joining us. We're going to be talking about Cruise to the Edge and Morsefest, two events I've never been to, and I'm so jealous that I just had to get Scott on here so I could live vicariously off of him. Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Hey everybody, man, I got a lot of compassion for you, Scott, because I know how much you love Neil Morris and Transatlantic, and
I do.
my heart's going to go out to you. So any way I can pull you in vicariously, rather than making you feel, the jellies, I'm going to try and do it.
Well, I am a ginormous Transatlantic fan. So the idea of Transatlantic at Morsefest performing not one but two albums in their entirety just got my blood boiling. I wanted to be there so bad, but you know how it goes. Life gets in the way. But yeah, Scott was actually present at Morsefest. And he followed that up with a nice little Caribbean cruise on Cruise to the Edge. So I'm so happy to have you here today. Let's talk about Morsefest a little bit first. Tell me a little bit about that event for, my viewers who've never been or really don't know much about it. Give me a little bit of background on what that thing's all about.
Well, Morsefest started, it's been going since 2014, and Neil Morse really started at the prodding of Mike Portnoy. And so he blames everything on Mike. Mike was like, come on, man, you gotta, he's looking at these other festivals, Marillion festivals and things. He's like, you gotta do one of these. And Neil is, honestly, Neil is really a humble guy. And he doesn't want to put himself front and center so even calling it Morsefest, he had a disclaimer for the first 2-3 years. He would always say, it was Mike's idea.
I remember he used to always say that.
I didn't want
almost
to
like he was embarrassed.
But Mike insisted. Yeah. So, but the thing that really got Neil going to even consider this is because, and maybe Mike suggested this, is to play the One album, his album called One, in its entirety, which I guess he had never done before, and that just lit him up. He's like, oh, I could play all of One. Oh yeah, and that got him juiced, Yeah. And so, it's basically 2 nights in a row, Friday and Saturday night. And
that first Morsefest, that was One and question mark.
No, it was Testimony, the first Testimony album.
Oh, that's right. They did the first Friday two
night.
Albums. Yeah.
Friday night, and that's a double album. But they did the whole thing Friday night, and then Saturday night they did the whole One album, and then they have each concert usually goes about 2 to 2.5 hours. So then they have other songs from the catalog that they play afterwards as encores and stuff. So that's how it started. And this happens in Nashville or near Nashville, right near Neil's home. And it's actually in the church, which might freak out some people to think, what, a rock concert's in the church?
Yeah.
But they go big. Like if you didn't know, if you didn't come see it from the outside, it's like they put like big lighting, fog machines, huge sound system in, and they're rehearsing in there for 5 days before the event. So they take over the church, and that is their office, And that's also how they make it affordable, because they essentially get the venue for free. A lot of volunteers with Neil's community help volunteer to put it on. And so that first year in 2014, I think the whole of the venue could maybe hold 800, maybe 900 people max.
Right.
That first year, there probably was like, I don't know, 500 people, which felt good to us. It was the first time. But in the more recent years, it's been sold out, or at least feeling like it's sold out. Like it's packed.
Yeah, I've seen some photos and videos from inside the venue. It looks like they are definitely packing them in.
Yeah.
Now, every Morsefest, has it been at that same church?
Everyone has been there. So they started in 2014. They've done it just about every year, even over the pandemic. They did kind of a virtual hybrid thing that was streamed online. And this year probably was the last year, because that church has been sold to, I guess, another congregation. And so they're kind of like, well, that might be it, because as I just mentioned, financially, that's how they could make this a possibility, because it's not like there's thousands of people coming in for this. Now, it's possible maybe they could work something out with the new owners, or it's possible they could find another site. I don't know. But they haven't been saying this is definitely the last one, but they've been saying kind of likely this may not happen again.
So that was kind of the vibe there in Tennessee, was a lot of people feeling like this was the last hurrah. I really hope that's not the case. I mean, I haven't heard anything telling me different. I haven't heard any rumors about a alternate venue, but I think you're right. If they don't have that kind of a venue, the business model just doesn't make sense anymore.
And they can recreate something new.
Perhaps,
it's like
yeah.
in all of these years they've done it, they have gone through and played virtually every Neil Morris album in its entirety, and done a Flying Colors one time, and this year, of course, with Transatlantic, and then the Neil Morris Band. I mean, they've played pretty much everything already, so they were going to have to be wondering, what are we going to do next year? I mean, Neil would just have to write
That's
new
a good
albums.
point. Yeah, they are kind of running out of material to do. And that was kind of the genesis of Morsefest, was to play these records in their entirety with choirs and strings and things that you can't take on the road with you. But let's talk about this year's Morsefest a little bit. It was basically a transatlantic love fest, from what I'm gathering. What was it? Friday night, the Whirlwind. And Saturday night, the Absolute Universe.
That's right. And then there were other songs as well, now, so they had done a 2-week tour before Morsefest, so they were really well rehearsed with about 3 hours worth of material. But then from just the tour that they did in a lot of different cities around North America, but then they added over another hour of material just for Morsefest. And I guess they'd been doing a medley of the Whirlwind on that tour, but at Morsefest, they did the entire album start to finish, which of course was amazing. And we didn't know what was going to happen. So Friday night it starts, and they opened with Into the Blue, which is an epic from the Kaleidoscope album, which I think they hadn't done on that tour. So that was totally new.
Yes, that's kind of an odd choice. No Daniel Gildenlip.
Well, they had actually they had played it twice on Cruise to the Edge in the past many years.
With Ted.
Once with Daniel, who was on, but
right. Oh yeah, he was there. Yeah,
which was really cool. But also with Ted. So Ted now, as some of you may know, Transatlantic is a 4-piece, but for touring they need to bring in a 5th member, and that had been Daniel for a number of years. But more recently, that's Ted Leonard. Largely just, well, it happened, I think, because of Daniel's health situations initially, but then also just, it's a lot easier.
I heard there were 2 reasons. Health certainly was one. I heard visas and that kind of logistical stuff was the other reason. Nobody's firing Daniel Gilden for his abilities, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, we'll get to Daniel and his band Pain of Salvation in just a little bit on the cruise for sure.
Oh yeah,
he's killing it. And so Ted's the 5th member live, and Ted can totally bring it. In fact, on one of those transatlantic shows on the cruise, when Royna was not on board, it was like one of Mike Portnoy's special things. Ted took the whole place of Royna, and Ted was playing some killer solos on like Into the Blue. They played, I think, Into the Blue.
Is an underrated guitar player.
He is.
I've seen some stuff on YouTube, him just playing a Fender, just messing around.
Yeah.
I had no idea he was that good, but the 3 Pattern Seeking Animals albums are kind of informing me of his brilliance, as if I didn't already know. But I had a question about the transatlantic shows. I had heard that there was some issues with Royna Stoltz's voice. Was that true in Morsefest, or was that just during the Cruise to the Edge?
Just on the cruise. Yeah. So I'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
But no, he sounded great at Morsefest, and so let me just go into that for this year, Morsefest. Yeah. So it starts Friday night. We don't know for sure what the set list is going to be at all. Which album they're going to do which night. They haven't even told us.
Oh, we didn't know that.
Not for sure.
Oh, really?
I mean, we suspected. So they opened with Into the Blue.
Cool. And everybody's like, what are you doing?
It was awesome. I mean, that actually is one of my favorite epics by the band.
I love that song.
I think it's fantastic. And then they go, they play a real rarity, because Mike loves to play things they haven't played live before.
Oh yeah, he does.
So they go back and to the first album, to the Procol Harum cover of In Hell 'Twas I.
In Hell 'Twas I.
And I guess they had never played that before.
No, I don't think they had.
And I think most of the audience hadn't even heard it before.
Yeah.
And I don't even know it that well. I mean, I've heard their version a few times, but it was killer. That is actually one of my favorite parts, just especially in this more jazz fusion section of it. Neil was really getting off on the keys. He was just, because he loves that fusion area. He doesn't do a whole lot of it, but he was grooving out playing that. So that was fun, and it was
that's awesome.
It was a little loosey goosey because they had just rehearsed it. This is the only time they've ever played it.
Well, that's kind of timely too, with the unfortunate passing of Gary Brooker.
Yeah.
So it kind of made sense to unearth that Chestnut. What a great song. Right. And I got to say, Neil's Hammond playing sometimes makes me really think of Procol Harum too.
Yeah, nice.
So that's just an awesome marriage. I love that cover. I did not peep at the set list, so I had no idea what they were doing because I wanted to talk to you about it. So
okay, I got you.
What else did they throw out there?
Well, then they threw out next they played Shine, which I don't think they played on the tour. And speaking of people who passed, this was a tribute to Paul Hanlon, who some of you may know, who the song was written about. Shine was actually written after Neil visited with Paul. He's a huge fan, lives in the UK, but comes over to Morsefest every year. And he passed away the week before Morsefest.
Yeah, I've seen that on Facebook.
Yeah, it hit a lot of the crowd hard and Neil hard. And so he gave a very teary version of Shine, which was beautiful.
What, Neil started crying on stage?
Go figure, man. Yeah.
What?
Never happened, right? He's cold as stone, yeah. So but he got through it. We weren't sure if he would get through it, but he did. Yeah. So that was a beautiful way of coming together. And this is really the other feature of Morsefest is the shows are amazing. The venue's actually, it's really nice because the sound is impeccable. You got Rich Mouser on the soundboard.
Yes.
And it just sounds awesome. But it's the community. I mean, the community really comes together. And, and this is an issue for some people, the whole Christian thing. It's like there is I would say, a spiritual undercurrent that runs through Morsefest. And it doesn't really matter if you're Christian or not. Like I'm not Christian, but and some people who are there are atheists.
Yeah.
Or a lot of different religions as well, and or agnostic and whatever. Everybody though really digs this vibe there.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's just an uplifting, positive vibe. And so community of people really get together. I'm drinking out of this mug that John Fiala makes every year. He makes
I've been seeing those mugs.
Haven't you seen them? Like he started making these for the community. I got this year's mug.
I know that mug from Neil's blogs he's been doing.
Yeah, these kind of sweet things just start popping up in the community. It's really special. And so that's also a reason that Paul Hanlon not being there, like he needed a tribute for us all to get through that together. So that was powerful. And then he went into We All Need Some Light after that, which of course is always timely, always needed. And at this point in the night, I'm starting to wonder, you don't think on Friday night they're just playing other stuff, and on Saturday they're going to play the Whirlwind and the Absolute Universe? Like, you don't think they would do that? And I start wondering this, but no, sure enough, they go into the Whirlwind on Friday night, play the whole thing, and I tell you, I mean, for a lot of people, that's their favorite transatlantic album.
Yeah, it is for a lot of folks.
Yeah, and I know some other people don't really like it. They really like the first two albums, and that's pretty much it. But for those, especially those people who really love the Whirlwind, I mean, this was just unbelievable. I'm
in the middle on the Whirlwind.
Are you? Yeah.
I think I like Bridge Across Forever and the Absolute Universe a little bit better, but I'll say something about the Whirlwind. Rich Mouser's job on that record, it's one of the warmest, most inviting sounding records I've ever heard. It's like a big warm hug, man. Yeah. It just envelops you in this beautiful warm sound. I've never heard a record quite like it in terms of its sonics. It's incredible. It really is. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, I think, Bridge Across Forever, you really can't beat that album. That second album is with those, I mean, just every piece of that is so perfect that perfect. You can't beat it. But the Whirlwind was very special live in concert. Then the next morning, I mean, Neil and the band get so little sleep. Well, Mike still gets a lot of sleep, but Neil shows up early for what's called the Inner Circle concert, and this is more of kind of an unplugged vibe. Every year he does something a little bit different, so it's an hour-long concert around.
And that is just for members of the Inner Circle, or are people that are going to Morsefest, can they find their way into that concert?
Officially, it's for Inner Circle members, but you're also allowed to bring one guest. So,
okay.
most of Morsefest is there. Or and for those of you who don't know what the Inner Circle is, it's kind of a early version of Patreon that's out there now.
Yeah, it is.
A lot of artists do. I mean, Neil really was ahead of the curve, and in fact, he's done it better than most other artists have. So that is a significant source of not only pleasure for his fans for like rare inside stuff, but it's also a great source for ongoing income that he can.
Did you watch when Jordan Rudess was on with Neil on his coffee thing? And they were talking about those alternate revenue streams. And Jordan was quick to give Neil props on being one of the pioneers for a small time artist to be able to quit your job and actually make a living doing music. And Neil created a real template to do that with Waterfall, with the Inner Circle, with Radiant. I mean, everything was designed specifically for a small independent artist to actually make money in this crazy world. And Neil is, he's the master at it. Absolutely.
You got it. If you want to make a full-time thing out of it, I mean, unless you're like Mike Portnoy and you can make bank every time you sign a pair of drumsticks. I mean, he's got it made at this point, but a lot of other people got to figure out special ways to do it. So Neil's been masterful at that. So the Inner Circle concert this year was focused around actually debut of stuff no one's heard before, because Neil's in the process of writing it. It's for his next solo album, which is called God's Smuggler, which is based on a book, I guess, called God Smuggler. And so this is going more kind of, I think, the direction of like Jesus Christ the Exorcist, where it is more of a religious thing, but it's also a story thing. And he's getting into sort of almost a Broadway kind of a theatrical approach in his mindset. So that's what he's excited on now. So he presented about an hour's worth of songs from that, debuting them. And like his son, Will Morse, was singing on stage. And, the other guy from who sang on Jesus Christ the Exorcist was singing too. I'm spacing his name right now, but great singer. So anyway,
Rick?
No, it wasn't Rick. Anyway, maybe it'll come back to me. But it was a really nice performance. Then they also do VIP things in the afternoon. Where they do, you have photo sessions with the band, you do a Q&A session, you get autograph signing, like I got my shirt signed by the band there.
Beautiful.
That kind of stuff.
Beautiful. I don't see a baseball jersey though.
Right. They
those are pretty sweet.
Talking about good business deals. And I told them, because everyone was freaking out about Neil's wearing this transatlantic.
I was
custom-made embroidered.
I was like,
an embroidered baseball jersey. Everyone wanted one. Yeah. They only made one for Neil on stage. Right. It was his tour clothing. But I was like, guys, if you want to make some extra money, you better put those on sale. And sure enough, they did, and they had that idea too. And so they've been taking orders for that. But they haven't been released yet. And then in the evening, Saturday night. And the other thing, they actually serve dinner in the church for people who want that option as well. So again, you're being served by Neil's wife and kids.
That's cool. Sherry and Will serving your food.
Yeah, totally.
That's pretty cool.
But it's a good way for the crowd to bond again and just be talking. It's really special. And then Saturday night, they came out, did the whole Absolute Universe, the whole shebang.
The Christian Rios visuals in the background.
Christian's great. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Christian does all of the background videos, and he had a real special one for this. It was fantastic. I loved a lot of those visuals.
No, he's incredible. What a talent. What a talent.
He's a sweet guy too. Really sweet. And he did that with some help from Daniel Levy this year, who's getting the action. So that's good to see, Daniel. And so they played the whole shebang, and then I think they closed with a medley, which incorporated many songs like "Stranger in Your Soul" and "Duel with the Devil" and various little bits here and there.
So nobody left Saturday night feeling like they got cheated, like they didn't get enough transatlantic.
It's the absolute ultimate universe, man.
But that begs the question: is it even possible to get too much transatlantic? And I for one believe there's not. But
There's one hysterical thing that that happened. I'll just mention is I think this might have been in the first night during the whirlwind. They have a fog machine, and every now and again it comes up and swoops up. It feels like a Brigadoon happening in there, and to even capitalize on that. So Pete is playing bass there, and he's not a tall guy. He has that Hobbit vibe going on,
does.
and he's being like the fog is coming up like considerably up to like his chest.
Right.
And so he just plays into it, and he's playing there, and suddenly he just starts lowering himself down into the fog like it's a Spinal Tap moment.
That's awesome.
The whole place broke up laughing. Everything was perfect.
Did you throw in a Brigadoon reference?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's what it felt like. It felt like Pete was going off into the midst of Brigadoon.
He knows his show tunes, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. We're going to be doing a ranking the Rodgers and Hammerstein next.
No, I'll miss that one. No, that's okay.
Now, when it's all wrapped up, most people are spending, the weekend in hotels and whatnot. Anything go on Sunday morning?
On Sunday, Neil does a worship service every year. And so he does that in the church as well. That's usually around 12 p.m. or afternoon. I missed it this year because I had to get over to the cruise that was happening. But he actually did one, which is insane because he had to fly to the cruise as well. So he must have done that later that night. And those are always very powerful. I mean, they really are, and they're special. And again, even people who aren't Christian.
Again, you're not an avowed Christian, but you brought up a point where, some people may have an issue with the spiritual overtones of Morsefest or Neil Morse's music in general. I'm like, first of all, it ain't no secret, right? I mean, he wears his heart on his sleeve. You know exactly what you're getting when you're dealing with Neil Morse. And number two, who cares? I love Venom. I think they're an amazing band. Yeah, all their lyrics are about Satan and whatnot. I don't care. I listen to music. If it's good, I like it. I've never understood that argument.
I never do either. I'm like, okay, so you're okay with songs about serial killers by Steven Wilson, but for some reason, and the other thing is, I mean, most people who spend any time around Neil just get the sense of just this amazingly heartfelt man, and who's very generous. Who's very enthusiastic, and you never get the feeling of someone coming across trying to convert you to his belief system at all. And even in his recordings that might use the name Jesus or God in them, it's just his sense of love. He's just expressing his sense of love for it. And that's usually what he comes back to, is love. Like even in the Jesus Christ the Exorcist album, love has called my name, is the name of the song. It's like, that's really what he's focusing on more and more. And so when he made that split, he left Transatlantic, he left Spock's Beard, but he came back to Transatlantic later, and it's sprinkled in there. But lately, as you know, less and less. I mean, the Absolute Universe and the Neil Morse Band's last album has very little,
little,
even subtle references. I mean, there are some of them in there, but it's pretty subtle.
I agree, and I have no problem with that, especially given that, Neil's going to continue down the path of doing worship albums and stuff like that. So he's got a lot of different outlets.
Yep.
So he can dial it down a little bit when he's dealing with Transatlantic. I couldn't care less. He can sing about whatever he wants to. Whenever I'm listening to an artist and I know for a fact that they're singing from the heart, that it's actually something that means something to them, that's all that really matters to me. And that's why I've never liked love songs. I mean, you sing a love song, you write a love song, you're in the studio, you sing it 400 times, you're mixing it, you're mastering it, you go on tour. Are you still feeling that same way after the 1,000th time? I don't think so. But with Neil, it's pure, it's raw, it's passionate, and it's him. It's him at the core.
Nice.
So I got no problem with it. Now we're done on Sunday, but you said you had to get yourself to Florida.
Man, you have no idea. So I had a morning flight on Sunday morning going from Nashville to Orlando to get to Port Canaveral.
Right.
Well, right after the end of the Absolute Universe, it's 11:30 at night. We're on our way to our hotel. I'm looking forward to after parties or something, and I look at my phone. I get a message: your flight tomorrow morning has been canceled.
Oh.
Canceled.
Oh
your
no.
your oversold flight has been canceled. And it's like, so we panicked. There were almost no good flight options
Oh
at
yeah.
all for the next day, or this was going to cost us like $700.
Chartering a flight could be even higher than that. Yeah.
But I knew one of my friends was headed down. Ian was driving from Morsefest down there overnight.
Okay.
And so I call him up. I'm like, dude, do you have room in your car for 2 more guys and our luggage? He's like, we'll make it work. So half hour later, we're meeting him, getting our luggage in there, checking out of our hotel, and we drove overnight 11 hours after seeing Transatlantic overnight. Ian did it. He is my savior. He is my angel to get there. And by midday the next day, we were in Port Canaveral. It was unbelievable.
You got there.
So, and a lot of people were struggling who were on that flight.
Oh yeah,
it was crazy.
I follow the Cruise to the Edge Facebook page, and I was seeing a lot of horror stories about people trying to get to Cape Canaveral, or once they got to Florida, I guess there was a big old long line trying to get on the boat. I guess people were complaining about that a little bit. But
hey, we're Prague fans, we'll complain.
Yeah, we're a strange bunch, aren't we?
Yeah.
Now, Cruise to the Edge, first one was what, 2013,
right?
And then there was like a rival in 2014, the Progressive Nation at Sea or something like that.
Yeah, man. That's where I came in, and that's where a lot of us came in. Yeah. And that was the Mike Portnoy and Derek Sherinian cruise. They put that together as Progressive Nation. And you know what got me on that cruise? Because when we first heard Yes is doing a cruise, and I'm just kind of like, really? I don't know. That sounds a little cheesy. I don't know about that.
Well, in your article, you said, "What's next? Vegas?"
Exactly. So even I had doubts, at that point, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to do that. But then Mike Portnoy came out with this, and what got me on it, because I'm looking at these good bands, but there was Transatlantic, and they were headlining. I'm like, wow, Transatlantic is headlining, and Spock's Beard is on this. Oh, and then they added John Anderson.
Yeah.
Plus doing a special set with Transatlantic. Yes, and that blew my mind. And I was like, I think I can't miss that.
Yeah.
And so that got me on the boat, and that got a lot of us on the boat. That was our first time. And anyone who was on that ship will tell you that was the best, because it was our first time.
Yeah.
And it was harder edged than Cruise to the Edges.
The bands were a little more towards the prog metal land in general.
Yeah. Because Portnoy was
being a Portnoy thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But you had Anathema on there. There were just so many bands that were amazing that were on there. And many of them have come over to Cruise to the Edge, like Pain of Salvation and such. But that was insane.
Was the only...
That's where they played Into the Blue. That was the first song played on the cruise as we were leaving the port. So that song is forever etched into anyone who was on that ship. That song just catapulted up the charts for us, because we now have that conditioning, that association with that moment of feeling like it was unbelievable. And so
I'm hearing that South cello American now in my head, the cello intro, and I'm imagining you're on the boat and you're leaving port and the sun's going down. Yeah. Sounds like a great memory there.
It was.
So that was the only Progressive Nation at Sea cruise, though. I guess they folded it, and Portnoy, put some of his energies into Cruise to the Edge. To what end, I have no idea how involved he really is. But now we've got one Prague cruise. We don't have competing entities. And this year's Cruise to the Edge was a little different. It's a Yes themed cruise ship without your titular band on board. What were some of the reactions to that reality?
Well, it's been so long in coming. This was supposed to happen, in 2020. It got postponed. It got rescheduled, then got rescheduled again. And so it was always a question, I think, were Yes even going to be on board? Because, especially with pandemic concerns, like Steve Howe, I'm sure, is saying, I'm not getting on a boat where I might get COVID for a week. No way. So I think it was always a question if that band was going to be on board this time or not. And so by the time it shook out that they weren't, It's a little weird. I think I put in my article Steve Hogarth's quote of like, yeah, it's kind of a bizarre thing with the title band not being on the ship.
Yeah.
It's like being a member of a group you wouldn't want to be a member of a group that would have you. And so it
that was a great quote.
But there were more bands on this than there ever have been before, and part of that was because we were on a bigger ship.
Yeah,
there wasn't
bigger boat this time, right?
Yeah, they usually do two. This promotional company usually does this, and they do a more Moody Blues kind of cruise called On the Blue. This year, On the Blue didn't sail, so they kind of merged some of those acts together, like Justin Hayward and a number of people actually, were more mellow. So they tried to get some of that crowd to all be on this one, and it worked. It was a great diverse.
I heard it was a good turnout this year.
I think it was really good given I mean, but it wasn't sold out or anything because just of the uncertainties of the pandemic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now every year y'all come back from Cruise to the Edge, and every year it seems there's like 2 or 3 bands that blew everybody out of the water. I've been reading a lot of stuff about a couple bands sets on the boat this year. I'm just curious if you share some of those opinions that I've been reading, because there were like 2 or 3 bands that seemed to just elevate their game above everybody else on board that ship. I'm just curious what some of the highlights were for you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll say mine, which I think go in tandem to what. And first, I'll just mention anyone who really wants to know more about the cruise and go in greater detail than I'm going to say here. I wrote a pretty lengthy article on this on the Sonic Perspectives website.
And I will put a link in the description, people, so cool. You can read that article. It's a really good one.
Thanks. So that describes how it sets up the different stages, like all of that.
Yeah.
So I won't go into that here, but yeah, I'll give you like 4 or 5 bands that really stood out. Number one for me was Pain of Salvation.
That's what I keep hearing.
And I am not a huge Pain of Salvation fan. I like them a lot, but especially the latter stuff. But a lot of people like the early stuff, and that's a little too intense for me for whatever reason. But this show, their second show that happened, I forget if it was last night or the penultimate night, in a theater called Studio B. I could not leave that show. And I wanted to leave it because Riverside was being delayed in the main theater. They were supposed to play earlier so we could see both of them, like go to Riverside and then go to Pain of Salvation. But Riverside got delayed hours. And so suddenly their time frame overlapped, which was hell for us. But first world problems, it's like
exactly.
I can't about that too much. So anyway, I'm in Pain of Salvation knowing that I'm missing the beginning of Riverside and wanting to go to Riverside, and I could not leave that theater because the show was so powerful.
Yeah.
My head was being blown. I'm like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I cannot leave it because they brought in their own light show for this, which most bands didn't.
Right.
They've got great lighting already built into the stages, but they had the special sauce, and they didn't even have a freaking bass player on this tour. They were using pre-recorded bass because their bassist couldn't make the tour, I think, because maybe he had a new kid or something with his family back home. So even that they're down a bassist,
that didn't even matter.
I tell you, and anyone who was there agrees, it was like we were transfixed. It was so powerful.
Yeah.
Just
that seems to be the consensus that Pain of Salvation might have been the winner of the cruise.
But, and you can't really say winner. It depends on your style, on your taste and stuff. And they are a lot heavier than some people were into. But I tell you, they were just like whipping that hair around. And,
I'm all about hyperbole. So I'm going to make blanket statements whenever I can.
Right on, man. But so number 2 would, or not even number 2. I mean, really, because then we got Life Signs. But I'm going to mention now Riverside in that show that was happening that I got to a little bit later on.
You missed a couple songs.
Missed a couple songs, unfortunately. But I'm going to watch the video now.
There you go.
Their big theater show. It was immaculate. It was spectacular. It was, and they're doing the 20th retrospective and 20th anniversary retrospective. So it was, I think, no songs from their last album, Wasteland. I think it was all older stuff.
Yeah.
Beautifully done. And let me just tell you that the first, every band pretty much does 2 sets, and their first set was on the pool stage outside, and it just so happened the winds were whipping so strong that they had a really hard time playing.
Yeah.
It was really intense. And so Marius commented on that multiple times, like, this is going to be an unforgettable gig because, and that you guys are sticking with us through this hurricane is just amazing. And so that was etched on people's minds. But the one theater was immaculate and it was glorious. And I'll get to Neil Morse and the transatlantic stuff as well. But then the other one I want to mention. Oh, and while this was all happening, you had Pain of Salvation and Transatlantic or Riverside playing at the same time. In another theater, Randy McStein, Nick DiVirgilio, and Dave Maros are doing an ad hoc Robin Trower tribute, playing a couple of his songs, and I had to go to some of that because Randy is like just blowing my mind as well. So I caught that in between these other things as well. And so it's just insanity, the amount of stuff going on at once.
Yeah, there's almost too much, right? I mean, you're going to miss some stuff. There's like 60 acts. You're only there for a few
You're going to miss a lot of stuff. But no matter where you are, you're going to, but you're going to get a lot of great stuff wherever you are. So also I want to mention in the top would be Life Signs. And a lot of people
that's the other one I keep hearing. Everybody was completely blown away by John Young and his band. I want to hear about it a little bit.
Yeah, they owned the theater. That was the last night. I mean, this could be the highlight show of the cruise as well. For a lot of people, it definitely was. It was packed. And Life Signs has always been kind of a darling of the cruise. They've gotten a lot of love, but I think there were a lot of new people who didn't know them before. A lot of, especially like Marillion fans who hadn't discovered them yet. And I mean, they just had an epic set in the Grand Theater, which is the biggest theater, and they played their whole new album, Altitude, front to back, and they just killed it. I mean,
that's what
and it's also largely because, not largely, but a key ingredient is Steve Rispin, their sound engineer, because he knows how to make it sound. Again, I'm going to use that word, immaculate. It's just like perfection. Yeah. And I think they've got some backing tracks in there too to make it sound a little fuller with all the keyboards and stuff too. But you don't. It's very tastefully done.
He knows exactly what he's doing to get the sound that he wants. I bet there was some backing stuff.
Yeah, so they had like Zoltan on the drums and John Poole on the bass. He is so fun to watch on the bass. Dave,
don't get me started on Zoltan.
Oh yeah.
I am a ginormous Zoltan Sorge fan. He's my guy. He's my guy. I love his style.
Yeah. They recorded their new album with him on drums without ever having met him in person. I think before. Yeah. And Dave Bainbridge when you have Dave Bainbridge as your guitarist and keyboards, it's just like, you're in a good spot. And and John Young's voice, he just sounds so good. I mean, it's just so smooth and just lovely. And John Poole singing backups and Dave killing it on like Last One Home. Just that extended guitar solo.
What a great song.
Like, anyone who loves like Gilmour kind of guitar solos, that's just it. So that Life Signs, Riverside, Pain to Salvation were the biggies. Other really notable is the debut of Randy McStein and Marco Miniman's band, that they brought in Nick DiVirgilio, who actually mostly didn't play drums. He did play a little duet with Marco on drums, but most of the time he was on guitar or keys. And then the killer bassist, Mohini Day.
You probably didn't really need him on drums if you got Marco hanging around, right?
No, I mean, 8-limbed Marco, man.
Man. Yeah. You're spoiled for choice there. Huh? Who's sitting behind the kit, Marco or Nick?
Right.
Just kill me now, man. That's
that was a very impressive debut. They really killed it. They I made a great impression. Randy really made some leaps on this cruise, which was great.
Well, Randy, the timing was great. I mean, apparently Randy had a good cruise, made a lot of new fans. Yeah. And then that big news broke about who Steven Wilson's bringing on the road with him in the reconfigured Porcupine Tree. So something tells me we're going to be hearing a whole lot more about Randy McStein in the next year or two. His star is definitely in the ascendancy, and rightly so. He's an incredible talent.
Yeah.
Now you had mentioned something about Royna Stoltz's voice going out on the cruise. I did hear something about that. So was he able to sing at all?
Only a little bit. So I was at both Flower King shows. They played twice. The first one, both times we were in this theater called Studio B. The first one, and I had just seen him with Transatlantic singing really well at Morsefest. So it was a surprise when and I guess this happened at the first Transatlantic show on the cruise as well. His voice was just and just nothing would come out, and he'd have to back away. And so at the first Flower King show, Hassa had to fill in, but he didn't really have time, and Hassa didn't know all of the lines. So there'd be some times when Hassa would start singing a song that usually Roina does, and Hassa would literally be like, I'm sorry, Roina, I don't know this line. And he just have to back off. And but the funny thing is, so Roina was in a chair playing, and his playing was great the whole time. That wasn't impacted, but Roina would talk so much between the songs. He just kept talking. It was hysterical, and you could tell the other band didn't want to waste time. They didn't have much time, so the other band was trying to get it going. And Roina kind of knew this. He's just like, yeah, they don't want me to talk so much, but I'm just have to tell you about this next song. It was hysterical.
Wow. You got him down pat, man. I closed my eyes. I thought I was talking to Roina for a second.
I've interviewed him a few times, and at the second set, the Flower King set that was on the last night, and he had gotten his voice back a little bit then, and he could sing more. But in the second Transatlantic show, when they had enough, well, here's a funny quick story I'll tell. So I ran into Neil maybe on the third day of the cruise, and he's like, "Hey, Scott, how's it going?" And I said, "Well, I just saw this Flower King show, and just so you know, like Roina really." He can't sing now. And
you might want to know this. That might be important to you.
Because they don't talk as much as you would think when they're on the ship. And I said, and Hassa had to fill in some of his lines, and he was like, "Oh, wow, I wonder if I better, I don't know if I know his lines. I better learn them." And so I started having fun with it. I'm like, "Well, Neil, you could get to sing like, like Roina's line, like, 'So you think you're in control.'" And because I know Neil, that cracks him up, that line. He's like, oh yeah. Oh, but we already did that. We're not doing that. The next, what could I do in the next? Oh, I know. Blackbird, blackbird, what have you done? And he got all excited that he could sing that. And then he stopped himself. He's like, oh, wait, no, Mike may not like if I do that. I better check with him. It was so sweet. Awesome. It was really sweet. But anyway, what ended up happening for that second Transatlantic show is that Roina could sing a little bit, and he did sing that owl howl part of Blackbird. He did do the important parts, but the other parts Ted Leonard covered.
Oh, okay.
And he had time to prep ahead of time. So it was a very rare Transatlantic show that we got to see Ted Leonard sing more than ever.
Yeah, that's kind of cool, actually, because one of the things I love about Transatlantic is having the multiple lead singers, and Ted is just incredible. I guess on the boat, we had the second Pattern Seeking Animals concert ever.
Second and third. Yep.
Yeah. Second and third. Right. Yep. Right. Because they did Morsefest right before they got on the boat.
Right before.
No Baygold, right? He's not he doesn't tour.
No, John Baygold with the band. No, that was always clear he wasn't going to tour. So they had Walter Eno and Dennis Atlas were their other members on the stage. So it was a 5-piece. And especially their second set, their first set was in a cramped theater. It was much too small for them. Second was much better. The sound was great both times, and they were awesome. They really sounded fantastic. I mean, it's so impressive because, as Ted likes to say, this, or the whole band says, this is a band where the music sounds simple, but it's actually really hard as ass to play.
Oh yeah.
Whereas a lot of bands sound hard, but anyway, they had their work cut out for them. Dave Maros was cursing a lot and having to rehearse because it was just such a bitch to pull off, but they pulled it off. I
gotta say,
beautiful.
It's a lot of work for Ted Leonard, I would imagine, because he's not only doing all the singing, but all the guitar parts too. And this stuff, like you said, is not easy. We're not doing Johnny Be Good here.
No, and he just learned 4 hours worth of Transatlantic material.
On top of that,
and toured with them. So it's insane that he pulled that off and have a day job as well. And so it's so impressive. Yeah, no, Pattern Seeking Animals was great. beginning. Rich Mouser was on the sound mix for them as well.
That doesn't hurt.
Killed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was over 36 bands. So I mean, I could go on and on about, who you should know, like Clone really was.
Yeah, you mentioned Clone in your article.
Clone was from France,
yeah.
and they impressed a lot of people. I mean, I could mention just about anyone. They were all so incredible. The McBroom sisters were awesome. Gabriel Agudo, Dave Kersner. I mean, I just go on and on.
Yeah, well, I am a huge Fernando Perdomo fan. I love him. I think he's the most unsung guy in the prog scene today.
Oh my God! And so let me tell you about Fern. So he played in 4 different bands, and he's always incendiary. I mean, I fell in love with him in 2015 on the cruise playing with Kersner, and but the unique thing this time was when he was in Gabriel's band. I think it was he was the bassist.
Wow!
And he took the Chris Squire approach of just keep turning it up. Just keep turning it up.
That's right.
It was thunderous. I've never heard a bass so loud, and he's just sitting there just pumping it. It was awesome.
He's awesome. I'm a huge fan of his. So I was wondering if you got a chance to see anything he was up to on the cruise.
Oh, a whole lot. This time at the end of Into the Sun, at the end of Kersner's set, he literally threw his guitar into the audience, where a bunch of us were kind of catching it.
There you go. He's a madman. I love that guy. So over 36 bands on one boat. You're sailing the Caribbean. What's going on with Cruise to the Edge 2023? Were there any whispers about that? Anybody talking?
No one knows yet. I think it might be later next year, like maybe in November. They've done that some years. It probably has taken them a while to figure out lineup and timing. And I mean, everything is so screwy because of the pandemic. So it'll probably be toward the end of next year is my guess. But it's really anyone's guess at this point. I think they said they'll announce something in another month or so.
I got one more question for you, Scott?
Yeah.
Did you get to meet Eddie Trunk?
I saw Eddie once. Only once did I see it. But see, that's the thing. There's so much going on. Eddie's doing a radio show. There's Q&As. And for me, the live bands are always the priority. Yeah. So I don't tend to go to a lot of the side things going on. The Q&A stuff. I mean, fortunately, I get to interview a lot of folks anyway. Right. So I'm like, I'm going for the shows, and that's my priority. But Eddie's on there as well. Yeah.
That's cool. I love seeing him on a prog cruise. That's just great. All the exposure that we can give to prog rock, the greatest genre of music ever invented by the human race, is all good with me. That's what we do here. Scott, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I know we went a little long here.
Here we go again, but you start talking about Neil Morse and there you go. You get into the epics, don't you?
We could probably talk for another hour about Morsefest and Cruise to the Edge, but I'll give you a break, and I'll give my viewers a break, and we'll cut it off here. But Scott, you are the man. I really appreciate you coming on today, talking about the 2 of the greatest events that we have in the prog sphere, and so happy that you were able to attend both and tell my viewers about it, because I don't think many of my people were on that boat. So they need to hear about it.
We're fortunate to have you here landside, my friend.
That's right. That somebody's got to hold it down, while you guys are out partying in the Caribbean. Somebody's got to take care of business back at home. So that's what I do, man. Anyway, the great Scott Medina in the house. I appreciate you, my brother. I'm going to go solo here and take it home. Bam, bam, bam. Yeah. Cruise to the Edge, Morsefest. One of these days, your boy's going to try to get to one of those things. But anyway, my thanks to the great Scott Medina from Sonic Perspectives. His article about Cruise to the Edge will be found. The link to it in the descriptions below. Check it out. Anyway, I love you guys. Blessings. Have a great one.